Aloof is a genuinely unique and interesting block-based versus puzzle game that took me by surprise by how differently it plays to any other of that genre that I've played in a very long time. There's a little bit of a learning curve involved with Aloof, so please bear with me whilst I explain how the game works, but it's genuinely interesting and unique. Some great ideas and spins on familiar gameplay that I think will really interest quite a few of you out there. Aloof can be played 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2, either online, offline, or versus bots. So you've got local and bot play there as well. As you can see, you've got a playing grid with blocks on, and I'll explain that a little bit in a second. But above each character on the left and right, you've got shields and hearts. The idea of the game is to eliminate your characters on the opposite team by getting rid of all of their hearts. And there's a couple of ways how you can do that. The first way is to send over waves. Now, waves are sent whenever you connect 5 or more of the same colour in a shape. So it doesn't have to be like in a straight line, it can be any old shape that you want, so long as 5 are connected horizontally and vertically in some way, shape or form. When that happens, assuming that it's not a shape that's in the middle of the screen as a constellation, which I'll explain in a second, you send over a wave, and the first wave will kind of stun the opposing team, and it will get rid of their shield, and it leaves them open to attack for a few seconds. And then what you're going to need to do is very quickly send over a second or third wave in that time period to then damage their hearts and start reducing down their HP. This is key to understand this because, as you'll see, when new blocks appear in your playing area, they don't move, they don't drop, they hover. And so what you're doing is strategically placing your blocks in very precise ways so that you can trigger chains. And you can do that on the playing side that you're on. But the other trick with Aloof is that you can press a button and it will flip it round, so you've got a front and back end to your playing area. So you can be building, in theory, 2 chains of blocks at the same time, and if you're clever, you'll trigger one, flip, trigger the next one, and then you'll have a 1-2 punch that goes over, the first wave breaking the shield, the second wave causing the HP damage. If you're fantastic, as that initial kind of block clears away, you may trigger an extra wave coming through where the blocks that are left that are remaining will collapse onto each other and maybe create a secondary collection of 5 blocks to go over. The other key way how you can win in Aloof is with these constellation blocks that are in the middle of the screen. These change depending on the difficulty level, so the easy ones will have very simple blocks that you can make, and then medium and hard will give you more abstract and bigger and chunkier things to try and create. And the idea with this is that you're racing to create all of these, because as soon as you create one, you then take over that block shape and it will start to fill up. As it fills up, the other opposing team can steal back that charge, but basically whoever owns that block when it's filled up gets it and gets additional hearts with an island that will pop up. But it can also be then, if you rebuild that shape again in the future in this battle, it's like a HP health kick. So it will bring back a heart or 2 for you. And that's really, really crucial if you're being pummeled. What's really also cool about this is that if you are able to take over all of the shapes in a level, you will win the game outright. And so, quite often the game will just stop there and then because you've got such a huge advantage that it basically calls it like a KO and you've knocked out the opponents off the board. Where this becomes absolutely critical is that the opposing team, if you collect that shape, if the opposing team then makes that shape, it also does extra damage for you. So there's a tactic here of perhaps not going for the most obvious shape that's in that constellation, because if it's the easiest one and you may get it, it's also the easiest one for them to keep pummeling you with later. And the more time you're spending having to heal yourself from their double attacks caused by you getting that easy shape, the less time you're spending making a good 1-2 punch to therefore get down their HP. So there's a real swings and roundabouts approach to those shapes in the middle. You have to go for them, but you need to make your choices. I hope that makes sense, because that crossed with the fact that you only drop the blocks when you want them to, as well as the fact that you've got this front and back mechanic for your playing area, all combine to make Aloof feel like the equivalent of fencing, but in a versus block-based game. Where this becomes incredibly timing based and strategic is when you're playing on co-op, though, because you need to work together, and you can be really effective if you do, because you'll have one person will get together a match 5, the other person will have one waiting in the queue. It could be that they've got one on each side, so you can potentially do a 1-2 and then the co-op person does a 3-4 and triggers, and you can really whitewash and change the tide of a battle very quickly if you get that right, so long as obviously you've not been pummeled before you get there. With Aloof, I found that battles needed to be the best battles would come from when everyone fully understood how the game played. When I was playing this locally with my other half, they got the mechanics quicker than I did. And so we went through about 15 minutes of me being exceptionally terrible at the game, whilst they was quite good. And so the battles were really uneven. And then as soon as I'd kind of clicked and I'd got to grips with everything and understood this 1-2 punch much better, actually we were having rageful battles that would swing wildly from one person having the advantage to the other and vice versa, and it was really enjoyable. So what I would say is that if you're going to put this into your multiplayer kind of rotation, you need to give people a tutorial on these kind of mechanics first, because it's quite an alien way of dealing with a block-based puzzler. Once you get that initial kind of learning hump out of the way, the game's fantastic. And because it's so timing based and you kind of are poised waiting for your attack and then you just kind of go in with the 1-2 jab, it's satisfying, it's strategic, it's got a kind of finesse to it in that you can't accidentally win. You really have to use your skill and nous to do so, because if you're just going to smash blocks down everywhere and hope for the best, like you can kind of get away with sometimes, especially with Puyo Puyo Pop, you're going to fail and you're going to lose. And that's why this feels like the adult strategic version of all of those types of games. I think what maybe has left this game to be a bit of a slept-on game is its graphics aren't the most drawing in graphics that you've got out there, although I do like the art style. Also, what's slightly strange, although I've come to quite like it over time, is that they've given the game the most miserable gothic piano MIDI soundtrack going. As if you're going for a desolate landscape, which you are in the story mode, but it doesn't lend itself to being dramatic for multiplayer battles. But it does kind of suit its overall vibe. It's a strange one. I've grown to like it over time, but initially I was like, what is this culture clash? But I wouldn't have it any other way now that I've got used to it. But yeah, Aloof, a very unique and interesting game. You need to get to grips with its mechanics before you really take on other people. Online does have people playing occasionally. I did match up with a couple of people. It's not hugely populated, but what you can do is have the online kind of running in the background to match you with something whilst you're playing with bots or locally at the same time too. Another great thing is that you can do the whole story mode in co-op, and I recommend doing that if you can, because the game has a really different feel cooperatively in a 2 versus 2 scenario to being 1 versus AI or another person, because you can seriously work together to cause some major damage, and that is like a proper tag team moment. Written review will be over on higherplayinggames.com. If you've got any questions about the gameplay, I appreciate this game might be a bit out there for some people, so you might have some questions about it. Drop them down below. And if you found this review informative, please do give it a like. YouTube's algorithm generally does not like me very much because it never knows what to do with me, as I play too many weird and random games. So giving it a like helps me out. Thank you very much. You guys take care. Happy gaming. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.